I'm Device from Australis, and welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel. It's a joke-free zone.
Mousesports have unexpectedly won ESL One New York, a huge tournament, one of the Grand Slams in the Intel Grand Slam on the ESL circuit, which includes the DreamHacks. And this was a team that came into this tournament with nobody looking at them as a potential champion. They had Na'Vi in attendance, we had FaZe Clan in attendance, we had Team Liquid in attendance. As an outsider, you'd have even been looking towards teams like NRG maybe could do something. No one was thinking Mousesports would leave with this championship. Obviously, they've struggled since they brought Snacks in. They've had a few top fours, but aside from that, they haven't been able to look like a championship level side as they were earlier in the year when they had Sticko. Now, the nature of how they won this tournament was everything. I mean, there's this great saying that I read. I think it was like the Hopi Indians or something had this quote that like, your character is your destiny. Premise being, as I would relate it, who you are as a person and the kinds of principles you hold to and the decisions you make are going to decide what situations you get into, how you get out of them, how people take you, how you take people. And therefore, it might seem like life's happened to you and there's fate, etc. But actually, it's you that's determining a lot of these things and how you react to it. So what was great about this final is it was a tale of two teams with a very different mentality, a very different playing approach, and ultimately who got the results that in some sense, it's a very loaded term, they deserved. Because you look at Mousesports, what do you have to say about them immediately? Well, they were in no way a dominating team here. They didn't dominate practically any opponent except to some degree NRG a bit, and even then NRG had moments they were in the game. But how did they win the championship? How did they win these series? How did they get all the way to the final? Through resilience, through the ability to come back, through the ability to not let a loss have a knock-on psychological effect, to reset for the next round, for the next map, for the deciding map, whatever it took, a bad performance from one player here, come back and win the tournament. Because against Fnatic, who had Scream standing in, a Belgian player, they lost the map. They were in trouble at one point in time. Then they went against Gambit. You know what? Gambit was doing pretty well. Gambit was looking like they were going to win that series. In so many maps in the final, even the ones that they ended up losing, they did these comebacks against Team Liquid. They at least pushed the score to a reasonable level once it even lost the map. In the other ones, obviously, they got back in the games. They climbed back through seemingly closing windows that Team Liquid looked like they were actually closing out. And how did they do it? They had ballsy players all over the place. Yeah, they didn't play with amazing chemistry in terms of all five players, but they were willing to make plays. They were decisive. They weren't a reactive team at all. They were the ones dictating the pace of the game. Then you had individuals stepping up, map for map for map. What's amazing is you look at the stats at the end of the final, you look at the stats for the whole tournament, there was basically nobody on Mousesports who had stellar individual stats. In the final, no one even had godlike stats. Well, it was a real committee effort, and it depended on the maps. Actually, early in the series, it was some players, later in the series, it was other players. Some players got them through the middle period. Some people won the clutches, other people did the big fragging. It was a real team effort, which as a result, I think means this is a one-off, but what a one-off to have, right? Then you look at the players. Okay, so Sonny, hailed as the best player in this team right now, especially with the issues they've been having with Oscar, where there's the rumours that he'll be kicked. He was missing for most of this final. For the whole tournament, he had good stats, but nothing like MVP level. But on those last two maps, this guy fucking delivered. He's the reason you got to a fifth map. Almost won it outright in regulation with that epic flank on Dust 2. And then in the fifth map, yeah, this guy took over like he has in so many Mirage games in the old lineup of Mousesports. Then you go to Chris J. This guy's supposed to be the captain now. It's not supposed to be his time to carry. Sure, we know he might make big plays in games. Yeah, you know what? Earlier in the tournament, he was going off. He was playing real well. He was outplaying NRG. Now you come to the final. Last two maps, he was sick as fuck. Everyone obviously is going to be capped by that ridiculous round towards the end of Mirage. This guy was a boss on Dust 2 as well. You go to Snacks, a player who I still think is underwhelming for this team. I don't think overall it was a good transfer. I know they've won this championship, which is a great one-off, but I think you look at his stats at the end of the tournament, didn't really live up to it. But you know what? Had a pretty strong final. I've got to give him credit, actually. Even in the losses, like that Inferno game, I thought he played a dynamite game on that one, actually. He won a bunch of clutches. He was in good position. He was actually playing somewhat stylistically like the Snacks of old, even though for the whole tournament he didn't put up the stats and the superstar numbers the Snacks of old had. So he ended up with weaker stats, and I'm still uncertain of how the future goes for this squad, but you've got to give it up to the guy, tip your hat, he played well in this final. Then you have Oscar. Okay, he wasn't as great in terms of numbers. He was a lot quieter. In the past, whenever Mousesports win a series or a tournament, he's usually the MVP level player. He had some fantastic playmaking though, and he still hit shots, and he still was daring to buy the AWP, but he wasn't playing passive in any sense. Finally, you have Rops. Now, I've mentioned this in the past. One of my big concerns about Snacks coming on board is that it seems like Rops is the guy of the original team that's fallen off a bit, actually, that's at a lower level. And it was the same in this tournament here. Very quiet. Even in the final, very quiet player. Didn't do a whole lot. Didn't have to in this sense. Didn't by any means completely let the team down or anything and almost cost them a championship. But he didn't do a whole lot. That is a concern going forwards. Because in the future, despite the fact this team won an epic best-of-5, despite the fact they beat one of the best teams in the world in a best-of-5 final, in theory had a deeper and wider map pool. Yes, I give them full credit for what they did now. They deserved it. They took that final from Team Liquid. They didn't get given shit. I know people are going to say Team Liquid show. Yeah, Team Liquid did some bad moves. Team Liquid did some amazing shit earlier in maps and put themselves in winning positions. And then it was the guys from Mouse who had to climb back into those games. As many teams would have rolled over and just given up Team Liquid the win 4-1, 3-1. And then in the third map, lost when they get broken on an eco and some mad bomb that doesn't get diffused. There's all sorts of scenarios that lesser teams might have gone away from. But I'm not a believer in this team for the future, I've got to say. I still think they have the same flaws, lack of chemistry, no supportive element, too much pressure upon people like Sonny. Chris J, I don't think his tactics, his calling style has actually suited this particular team without Sticko to do some of the heavy lifting along with him. Puts a lot more pressure on him and especially on his AWP, as you've noticed. They've gone to a lot more double AWP setups. I actually think they had an easier run up to the final. I mean, remember, they had to play Fnatic, Gambit, and then NRG. Where was Na'Vi? Where was First Class? Sure, other teams beat them. My point is, though, I didn't get to see them beat 2 or 3 teams in epic best of 3s, because this tournament was all best of 3 until the final. Yes, beating Team Liquid's a big deal. Team Liquid also helped to beat themselves as much as they'd never won a big final. That was a massive international event with the stage thing. So you kind of had a little bit of help on that one. And so if you face against Na'Vi in a big final, are you going to win it? I don't think so, actually. If you face against Astralis in a final, you're going to win it. I think you get torn up, despite the fact you've got these good playmakers. You've got to have more than just individuals to win consistently. So I think they have very solid upset potential. That's one thing I've always said is bizarre about this Mousesports team. Is why I don't blame them necessarily on paper for doing the roster move, because the old team, their problem was they were a placeholder top team. Once the other teams got better, they were always going to go down a bit, and they tended to play very consistently and then lose very narrowly in 3 maps. This team is much worse. I don't think they're as good a team. They have nowhere near the consistency, but they have higher upset potential. And so occasionally they're going to have good runs, but they won't have the placings on the same level, I personally think, because they've got these fantastic individuals and individually they can make magic happen. But I think their map pool's weak. I think their consistency's weak. I don't think they have consistent players beyond the top end Sonny and at the lower end Chris J. I think they struggle a lot in the middle part of their team setup. I certainly think they have map pool strength issues still. They can play a lot of maps, but are they consistently good on many of them? I don't think there's a single map in the world right now that Mousesports is top 5 on. I think it's a legitimate comment. Go out there, look at it. The best they can probably put forward is maybe Dust 2. Even then, I think there's better teams and the teams that have proven it more often. And obviously, they almost lost this to Team Liquid, right? Then you've got to talk a little bit about Team Liquid. We won't talk about too much. They probably deserve their own video because I'm just going to tie this into what I said before. Your character is your destiny. This was their tournament to win. Before they could say, you know what? We were unlucky. We ran into phase when they were in peak form. Absolutely accurate. We went and in the Mykonos final, our coach had to leave due to literally getting an allergic reaction to a banana in the second to last map. Yeah, that's totally true. That would hurt a team, you know. Twists was still too young back then. He hadn't come online. He was having problems in a lot of finals earlier this year. Yeah, that's true. You know what? Naf only just joined the team. He's playing great, but he had to sync up with the rest of the team. It's all true. Then you get to towards the end of the year, we kept running into Astralis. That might be the best team ever. Yep, that's absolutely right. No one can seemingly beat them except on rare occasions. But this time, you don't have a single excuse, do you? Because all the previous losses to Astralis, that's Astralis, the best team in the world. You didn't have to face them here. There was no FaZe and Na'Vi, teams that actually would be legitimate to lose to. This isn't just about Astralis. This isn't just about playing a favourite, in a big match. It's about being on stage. It's about doing the final things that a champion does to hold his poise and to make the plays that he needs to at the end of the game as well as at the beginning of the game to lift that trophy. And at the moment, it looks right now that Team Liquid has the problem that the Kongs of old in StarCraft and other games have had, where they help themselves lose as much as the opponent beats them. And so as a result, you've got to look at this team and say there's something psychological in this team that is stopping them from closing out these games. And it reminds me, again, I've always drawn the solution to the Astralis core of old, going back to 2014 and 2015. And then at times in early 2017, they had some of this where they'd always play these epic games, and they'd always have leads and always be getting back in the games and go to 3 maps. But you knew when it came down to the tough moment, they'd lose, just as you knew in the past an NIP or an SK Gaming or a Fnatic, they would win in those moments and they would come back into games. The front runner loses, the guy who gets back into the game wins. So in that sense, it is kind of deserved that Team Liquid lost this final. Your character is your destiny, and this is their destiny, because at the moment, This is their character. But it doesn't always have to be. And that's the key point. That's also why I love drawing the Astralis comparison, because look where they are now and look at the way that they overcame it in their own particular fashion. Team Liquid could potentially do this. They've got that much talent. Then you've got to look at some of the players in the team. So first of all, Nitro, what a fucking boss. He played amazing this final generally. I thought he actually had a real true captain's performance, just as Chris J did on the other side. Twists, easily the MVP of the tournament. I don't care that he lost the last map. No one was close to this guy. That's a performance that deserved a title. If he plays like that in future tournaments, he will get many championships and he will go down as a legendary player. He has the chance to become one of the best North American players ever in esports history. That's the talent level this guy has. Again, he didn't do anything wrong in that final. You go down the line. Elige, okay, he was quiet quite a lot of the time. I actually didn't think he quite stepped forward enough. His team was still in a lot of good positions. I'd have to go back and review the VODs. But yeah, I do feel like he was a little bit too quiet. Taco generally did his job. I know people are going to look at the fragging and go, yeah, but everyone else is good. That's not his job. And he does bring some championship points. You saw in that 1v2 where he played it great, even though Rups did nothing wrong on Dust 2. You saw the last two maps. Taco was going off. He was doing a great job. He was even secondary open. He was holding that B-sec that should have been a liability on Dust 2. When you look at the player base of Team Liquid, he did his job. He did a great job. The guy I have to obviously single out is Naf, because he was garbage in this final. He's supposed to, on paper, okay, last few months, Twist is the best player, right? But for the year, it's supposed to be Naf's the best player in the team. I often pick Elige because of the consistency, but I've got to say this. One piece of context. Yes, he was terrible in this final, and aside from a few playmaking rounds and obviously winning that 1v2, generally did not give nearly enough frags or star impact. I will say this detail. While people are going to go hard on him justifiably for this final, this is a guy who earlier in the year, when they lost finals and big matches, was the best player in the team. He was the guy who helped them win that Summit final. This is a guy who was good in the EPL and the ECS finals. He was bad in the E-League final, sure, I'll give you that one. But other than that, he was playing very well. It wasn't just him in all the past ones. This is a different twist to the story, because it was Twists that actually often was the player missing. Earlier in the year, last year in the ESL One New York final, he wasn't at the superstar level he was earlier in tournaments, earlier in the... This is the guy who in the past wasn't showing up. So different problem for the team in that sense, just in the same way as Device didn't choke away every Astralis semi-final. Some of them actually showed up for, and then they lost anyway. So that's just the nature of the team at the moment, and it goes beyond one player is the point I'm making, even though at the moment we have one player up, one player down, and by committee they didn't quite do it as much as they should, whereas actually Mousesports showed them how it's done. They got it done map to map to map. So congratulations to Mousesports, fantastic performance, especially a very ballsy, very gutsy performance. I loved seeing the mainstay Chris J with that epic round to pretty much close the game out. I like that each player got his own moment to shine map to map. I love that even in losses they were still coming. I hope we can see more of that, because that would make the scene very sexy for the teams like the Navis, the Team Liquids, the Astralis, to have a squad like that that's so dangerous. I don't know if they can always turn up and do that. I would guess they're probably not going to, but from this particular day they did, and that's all that history will remember. This video was kindly supported by Gardner Wilson, Dean Tanglis, Alex Adams, Eddie Wingfors, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Godawful Waste of Space, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, James Harding, Daniel Yordanov, VeXii, Robert Baxter, and a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Now, do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Perhaps you'd like to ask me a question for my monthly AMA. Would you like teasers to see who's coming next on my upcoming content and what's going to be coming down the pipeline? Perhaps you want to take part in an esports discussion with me. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today via the Patreon link below.